say firm, but not 100% firm. They call up and they say, would like to do something.
What is the impact of the newly announced U.S. response tax? U.S. President Donald Trump and top officials have confirmed that tariffs will increase again starting August 1st, 2025, delayed by 3 weeks compared to the previous deadline. However, he is still willing to extend the deadline if countries present proposals. Earlier in early April, Trump announced the imposition of reciprocal tariffs on all trading partners, ranging from 10 to 50%. A week later, he announced a postponement of higher tariffs, temporarily applying only a 10% rate for 90 days to give countries time to negotiate with the US. The previous deadline was July 9th. Join Economy Roast for an in-depth analysis in the next 15 minutes.
I think we can work out the peace between us and the entire...
On July 6th, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told reporters that high import tariffs would come back into effect on August 1st. However, U.S. President Donald Trump is still setting tariffs and negotiating trade deals.
Sending letters out on Monday having to do with the trade deals. Could be 12, maybe 15. You know, Secretary of Commerce right here. And I guess, Howard, I would say it could be maybe as many as 15 or so. And they'll be going out on Monday, and some will go out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we've made deals also. So we're going to have a combination of letters, and some deals have been made. They're going to be tariffs. The tariffs are going to be the tariffs. I think we'll have most countries done by July 9th, yeah. Either a letter or a deal.
But they go into effect on August 1st. The tariffs go into effect August 1st, but the president is setting the rates and the deals right now.
Are you expecting any deals to be signed this week, and what countries are closest to that?
Well, the president is right in the midst of discussing all sorts of deals with all sorts of countries, and the gentleman to my right is going to decide, and I'm going to be with him when he makes that decision.
On the social network Truth Social, he wrote, "Any country that sides with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be subject to an additional 10% tariff. This policy has no exceptions. BRICS is a group of emerging economies accounting for more than 40% of the global population and about a quarter of the world's GDP. The group was founded in 2009 with 4 initial members: Brazil, Russia, India, China. BRICS later added South Africa, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Indonesia. In addition, BRICS also includes a number of partner countries.
I am pleased to announce that the United States tariff letters and/or deals with various countries from around the world will be delivered starting 12 p.m. Eastern, Monday, July 7th. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff. There will be no exceptions to this policy. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
The reason President Trump decided to impose reciprocal tariffs on trading partner countries during his second term is the issue of the trade deficit that the U.S. is currently facing. This means the U.S. is importing more from these countries than it is exporting. Trump stated that the reciprocal tariffs are also a way to retaliate against policies that hinder the export of American goods to other countries. To avoid these sky-high tariffs, Trump encourages trading partner countries to produce goods directly in the U.S. On July 4th, European stocks fell as investors braced for the impact of upcoming U.S. tariffs, with Germany's DAX index dropping to a low of 23,703.65 points amid market volatility. At the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, traders closely monitored developments surrounding the new legislation passed by U.S. President Donald Trump, dubbed the Big, Beautiful Bill. Oliver Roth, head of trading at Auto BHF, noted the potential impacts of the bill on currencies, stating that the dollar has lost 20% of its value since the start of the year, making foreign products more expensive regardless of the tariffs still under discussion. As markets remained volatile, the DAX index fluctuated throughout the trading session, reflecting investor uncertainty about the tariff implementation timeline. Banking stocks also showed mixed performance amid broader concerns about economic stability.
Die Wirtschaft und vor allen Dingen die Finanzmärkte schauen gebannt auf die Aktivitäten in den USA.
The economy and above all the financial markets are keeping a close eye on the activities in the USA with regard to the Big Beautiful Bill, according to Donald Trump, which passed through Congress yesterday. This has many implications. Firstly, it has an impact on currencies as the dollar has depreciated by 20% since the beginning of the year. This means that products from abroad will become 20% more expensive simply because of the currency, regardless of the tariffs that are still hanging in the air. In addition, investors' concerns about the safe haven of the USA have also increased as the Americans are taking on almost 8% more debt compared to the current USD 35 trillion in debt they have already accumulated, which is of course also worrying the world, and Donald Trump is hoping to stimulate the economy domestically. It remains to be seen whether this will actually happen for the big and rich in that country. Deadlines set by US President Donald Trump are not really upsetting the world stock markets at the moment. The pulse is still stable and not racing, because in the past the expectation was and is that Donald Trump is a deal maker. He has an edge, he is a tough negotiator, but at the end of the day he also wants a deal, he wants a result, and that is why the stock markets are currently rather relaxed about this deadline in relation to the tariffs. At the moment we are definitely assuming that we will reach a negotiated solution here too, and that nothing will escalate further.
Eine Verhandlungslösung bekommen werden und es eben nicht weiter eskaliert.
So for our industry, it is very important that in the upcoming week there will be a solution. We are quite aware that it is impossible in this short time to do a whole trade deal, like with all the details. So we are asking for first deals for the important domains like the automotive industry, because the current tariffs that we are facing are something that we cannot live with in the future. That is very toxic for our industry. So Europe is really asked to find a deal with the USA now, and then in the aftermath, they can do the details. So the worst case scenario is that in the upcoming week there will be no deal, or even a situation where there will be a rising trade conflict and each party will even add on additional tariffs like we have seen with the USA and China. That would be very toxic for both sides. It will cost wealth and it will cost jobs on both sides. So it is very important to us that there will be an agreement. First agreements for the most important industries, and then furthermore, we need to have a more detailed agreement. I think one lesson for Europe is that we need to have more trade agreements with the maximum regions possible. I think Mercosur is an example for a development where it took way too long. It's almost 3 decades and we still haven't finalized it. Now, hopefully that will happen in the upcoming weeks. But I think Europe has to learn to be more pragmatic and has to look out right now, because there is a momentum for a lot of regions in this world who want a safe trade partner, and I think we can actually play that role. So we should be on the lookout for more trade partners, and as I said before, we need to be more pragmatic in our approach of finalizing trade deals.
European shares fell on Monday, July 7th, with the Pan-European Stocks 600 index flat at 541.15 points as of 08:35 GMT. Other major regional indexes were mixed, with Germany's DAX up 0.4%. Carl Zeiss Meditech and Merck KGaA fell 2.1% and 2.1% respectively after China imposed its own restrictions on EU medical devices.
The mandate of July 9 this week is basically history, because after the last announcement, it is now postponed to August 1st, which means that we have several weeks to negotiate further, and the stock market in particular could of course remain tense in the back-and-forth situation it is currently in, because negotiations with the major partners, such as Europe, will now definitely take longer. Donald Trump recently had to backpedal over and over again. It is obvious that his tariff plans will ultimately have to be borne by his own consumers, and that means he can't go on like this. The next elections are already coming up next year, and he has to make sure that he doesn't run into a major problem in the second half of his term. This means trying to govern this country with a good and steady hand. So far, he has only succeeded to a limited extent, even though he is, of course, constantly trying to highlight any successes, which unfortunately do not exist, as the US economy has been doing relatively badly in recent months. First of all, the EU must react. In any case, the EU must not only try to take a strong stance, which Ursula von der Leyen probably did recently, but it must of course ensure that we reach a compromise. China was perhaps a little more skillful there, but also more powerful. And Donald Trump doesn't like Germany's approach in Europe at all, to be a permanent beneficiary of exporting to the USA. It's not Europe's fault, but Donald Trump has identified Europe as the culprit, and that remains his focus. So he definitely wants to weaken Europe economically, and from this perspective, the negotiations may also become more difficult for Europe. I think Donald Trump has committed to this 10%, which to him are a must in any case. I don't understand the logic behind this, but I think he wants to tighten the grip on individual sectors in particular, such as the automotive and steel industries. Whether there may also be further restrictions on health shares is another important question for Europe, and we haven't really made any progress on this yet. So there are indeed industries for which matters definitely need to be regulated, and we are currently a long way from that.
As of 5 p.m. on July 7th, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a total of 14 letters sent to various countries, notifying them of significantly higher U.S. import tariffs. The first two partners informed were Japan and South Korea, whose goods exported to the U.S. will face a 25% tariff. Subsequently, Trump announced that the U.S. would impose a 25% tariff on Tunisia, Malaysia, and Kazakhstan, 30% on South Africa, Bosnia and Herzegovina, 35% on Serbia and Bangladesh, 36% on Cambodia and Thailand, and 40% on Laos and Myanmar. The new tariffs will take effect from August 1st and will not be cumulative with previously announced industry-specific tariffs, such as those on automobiles, steel, and aluminum. This means the import tariff on automobiles from Japan will remain at 25% rather than stacking up to 50% with the new tariffs, as was the case for some other goods previously subjected to similar tariffs by Trump. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that 12 additional countries will receive similar letters in the coming days. Trump also signed an executive order postponing the previous deadline of July 9th for reaching tariff agreements, which has now been extended to August 1st.
I have the signed letters that went out to both South Korea and Japan today, and there will be approximately 12 other countries that will receive notifications and letters directly from the President of the United States. And weeks ago, I stood at this podium and I told all of you that the President was going to create tailor-made trade plans for each and every country on this planet. And that's what this administration continues to be focused on. The President will also sign an executive order today delaying the July 9th deadline to August 1st. So the reciprocal tariff rate or these new rates that will be provided in this correspondence to these foreign leaders will be going out the door within the next month, or deals will be made. And those countries continue to negotiate with the United States. We've seen a lot of positive developments in the right direction, but the administration, the president, and his trade team want to cut the best deals for the American people and the American worker. That's what they're focused on. I want to go back to the trade deals. As you see, we have these beautiful letters that the president has signed. This one is to the President of the Republic of Korea, original signature on that, and these will be mailed. And then here we also have another letter to the Prime Minister of Japan as well. Both countries will be receiving a 25% tariff rate effective on August 1st.
The president announced last night that any countries aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS
That's right.
will be charged with an additional 10% tariff. Can you tell us more details on that? What specific policies is the president talking about here? What policies should countries stay away from to avoid being subject to additional tariffs?
Sure. Well, the president feels, generally speaking, that BRICS is seeking to undermine the interests of the United States. It's the president's utmost responsibility to put the interests of the United States first. That's how he views his job as president. So he's going to ensure that America is fairly treated on the world stage, and he'll take any action necessary to prevent countries from taking advantage of the United States and our people. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
U.S. markets reacted to this move, with the S&P 500 dropping nearly 1% and stocks of Japanese automakers sliding. Negotiations are still ongoing, with some countries seeking last-minute deals to avoid the tariffs. Japan's Nikkei opened lower on Tuesday at 39,507.07 points, but later turned positive after Trump indicated that tariffs could be adjusted for certain countries. In South Korea, the Korea Composite Stock Price Index, KOSPI, opened 1.50% higher at 3,105.44 points as of 0110 GMT. Wall Street stocks fell on Monday, July 7th, with the S&P 500 declining sharply after Trump announced significantly higher tariffs on imports into the U.S. Additional note on the S&P 500. According to the real-time financial data provided, the S&P 500, SPY, closed at 619.999 USD on July 7th, 2025, reflecting a decline of approximately 0.85% from the previous day's close of 625.34 USD, consistent with the market reaction to the tariff announcement. For detailed price movements, refer to the finance card above. This decline suggests that if Japan and South Korea respond to the 25% U.S. tariff by imposing higher tariffs on imported goods from the U.S., President Trump will retaliate by raising tariffs on cars from these countries. This could lead to a decline in economic indicators such as investment, trade, related stock prices, etc. However, Mr. Trump still hinted at trade cooperation with each country so that this reciprocal tariff could be adjusted up or down.